Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Jump Space. In the previous video, if you guys didn't catch it, we talked about Keepsake's biggest update yet, the first major content update for their new co-op shooter Jump Space. Fantastic changes all the way around. I have nothing but praise for the things that they added. This episode, however, what I want to talk about is something that the devs talked about a little bit in their Halloween major content update live stream. It's the inventory system is something they brought up, and I'd really like to go into depth about how this system can change and why it must change for the game to succeed in the future. My name is Vault Zero. I make space type game videos. With that out of the way, let's jump into it. So, guys, I actually have a 4-part plan for the inventory problem. And if you're not aware, the inventory problem, it's too restrictive. You can only have 4 items in your inventory at any given time. And one of those items is a mandatory item known as the multi-tool, which you need to progress through different missions, unlock different objectives, and things of that nature. So they really limit you to 3 items. But once you add in a healing item, a weapon, now you've got 1 slot. And that's just too restrictive, most people feel. On top of that, they have a tier system for weapons. You have Mark 0 to start with, and it goes up to Mark 3. Or maybe it starts at Mark 1. Actually, I think it starts at Mark 1. But anyway, so when you get those upper end weapons, that first 2 Mark 2 that you get, the first Mark 3 that you get, you don't want to lose those. And, you're going to, with the limited inventory space, you're just like, okay, well, how can I hold on to all these Mark 3 weapons that I've got? The game has no storage system for that currently. And it's been a big talking point for people in the community. The devs have touched on it, and they've mentioned multiple times that they hear us. That was the big takeaway from the update stream the other day, that they hear us. And they're actively working on a fix. They've mentioned a couple of times now that they really, really are trying their best to avoid adding the feature people are talking about, the blocker system for storing weapons. So to try to combat that, what they have done is they have added a vendor system where the vendor will, when you go to the shooting range, there are weapons available for sale, and they're randomly generated. They can be anything. They can be a Mark 1, a Mark 3, and there's no limit on what weapon will be there. Anytime you enter the hangar, it's a different weapon, a different set of weapons that you can purchase. In addition to that, they've also talked about making weapons more likely to spawn during the missions that you're doing. Today, I want to jump into a 4-part plan that I have put together that I think could overhaul the inventory system and make it less restrictive and kind of meet in the middle ground. So, number 1 is you have an inventory slot change. You've got to. I feel like this is the main thing that you need. The multi-tool and probably healing items need their own specific slots. I don't really understand off the jump why the multi-tool was not given its own specific slot. I can kind of see, in a way, the healing items not given their own specific slot. You have to decide whether you're going to bring them or not, or just trust that a friend will bring one with you if you're not playing solo. But the multi-tool, I think, is kind of crazy to me that it didn't launch with it being its own respective slot. Now, one idea I thought was kind of interesting that you could perhaps do is that maybe if you added a system where you could add like craftable like pockets or something to your spacesuit, and this way you can add a multi-tool and healing pocket respectively. That way you have 2 additional pouches on your your spacesuit, and then you could have then you'll be able to carry 4 different items outside of those 2 items that are on their own special pockets. Number 2, and this is a feature that we already have. The feature is the vendors. I think they mention the vendors quite a bit. I think it's a great idea to add the vendors. That way, hey, if you lose something, it's not super hard to replace. I kind of like the idea that weapons are kind of scarce throughout the galaxy. Maybe they shouldn't be if it was a lived-in galaxy before. I know, like, the Legion's taken over the galaxy, but all those weapons I feel like got to be stockpiled somewhere, right? So maybe I would increase the spawn rate of the weapons a little bit. I wouldn't go crazy with it. I think as long as you have vendors, you really don't have to up the spawn rate of weapons really at all if you don't want to. But number three, they talked about this too, and I think it's a great idea. It's not implemented yet. A progression system. And my idea when they mention a progression system is you include sights, muzzles, magazines, things like that. And as you level think of it like as a mastery system, really. As you use that halberd or that iron belt, you unlock different attachments for those weapons. Uh, but here's the thing with that, and I mentioned it briefly at the end of my last video. If you're mastering these weapons and you're unlocking different attachments, and you're putting your own touch, the attachments that you prefer on a weapon, it's going to hurt more to lose that weapon and not less. So you're really, like, if you include the ability to customize weapons, you almost by default have to add a weapon storage system. And if you don't want to add a weapon storage system, if you just want to say, hey, if you lose your weapon, you just lose it, what you could do is, since you already have the vendors, right, and you already have unlocked the pieces that you can add to, say, I'm going to go back to a halberd. Say you've unlocked all the sights for the halberd and a couple different magazines, and you lose the one you're using. You lose your Mark III. You could always go back to the hangar when a halberd's available for sale, pick that up, and put the attachments right back on it because you've already unlocked them. It's a little time consuming, so what I think would be nice is if they would add the ability to kind of favorite what attachments you like the most and what you've put on different weapons before, if that makes sense. That way you can just click, add favorite attachments or whatever, and then bam, it takes 2 clicks. It's almost like you didn't even lose your weapon. The devs have mentioned multiple times that they want to make this feel like a game where you have to scavenge for what you have. They don't really want to add a storage system. I think most fans would kind of disagree with that. I think they want to hold on to the weapons that they've got. But the other part of this situation is this. I thought about, what if the devs make, if you think about like the Division and the Dark Zone, where the most dangerous area holds the best loot. Keepsake could do something similar. They could say, they could make they could give us a storage system, right? They could give us a storage system, but they add a modifier where for a particular region or sector in space, if you go in and you die, your weapons are destroyed. Like, whatever you bring in is destroyed. But the trade-off is that the best components and weapons and things like that are located in this region. I think that could add some risk and reward to the game that would be interesting. I think people would engage with that. My goal is to find a happy middle ground for everybody. I know the devs want to design a game that they want to play, and they've said they don't want storage. I think you should add storage, but I think perhaps if you were to add a region like what I'm talking about where weapons are destroyed, maybe if you increase how much weapons cost to buy, you can kind of really lean into that risk and reward. Like, yeah, weapons are kind of easily replaced, but they do cost a significant amount to replace, if that makes any sense. That way, both sides of the camp are kind of happy. You have your storage system, but you also have a system in place where if you go in, your weapons are destroyed, and you have to replace them using your credits that you farmed in the missions. I think that is a happy medium for everybody involved, and I think if Keepsakes is watching, guys, that is what I encourage you to do. And the last thing I wanted to talk about too is a little bit different. It's a little bit outside of the inventory system changes and all that good stuff. I do think that is essential and it's fundamental for the continued success of this game. The other thing I want to talk about that's a little alarming to me that I wanted to bring up when it comes to the success of this game is I think I'm not trying to sound overly critical, but Keepsakes really needs to invest in a marketing team for this game. I think this game would be a lot bigger than what it is if there was some sort of advertisement, even if they were to pay like, YouTubers, content creators to, make videos and advertise their content. I'm not saying that they haven't in the past because I know at launch there was some pretty big YouTubers making review videos about it, but really those real big YouTubers that were making content about it aren't anymore. So that leads me to think that was a one-time deal, and I think, especially when the game's this young, you still want to have that continued exposure to as much people as you can get. That's just my suggestion. You guys could take it or leave it. I would love to hear you guys' thoughts, though, back to the weapon system. How would you guys change the inventory system? What changes do you think essential? Do you think any changes are essential? Do you like it the way that it is? I would love to hear you guys' thoughts down in the comments. And until next time, guys, I will catch you in the stars.